Teraleak is back with Teraleak 2, the biggest Pokemon leak news since the original Teraleak from last year. The hacker has released the ZA source code, beta build, and documentation, so let's review it. But, as a disclaimer, make sure you click off this video if you don't want any spoilers. So it looks like the leak starts with the source code from Pokemon Legends ZA, releasing Thursday, October 16th. But it looks like many of these items didn't make it into the game or were scrapped features. This looks to be an earlier version of the battle menu, which looks more reminiscent of other Pokemon games. I'd argue the menu from the game that was previewed in recent Pokemon Presents looks a lot tighter and has much better user experience appeal. There was originally a ride system, which looks to be now scrapped, that I admit looks very janky. It's likely a feature they tried to bring over from X and Y, but maybe it didn't function as they intended. Okay, this is crazy. Legends ZA originally had shooter-like gameplay. Though, looking at this, I'm hoping this was earlier in the build, and likely them trying to have more trainer interactions, or early testing on their more action-style combat that they demoed in Pokemon Presents with the Versus mode. The leak suggests the combat style was very different what we could be getting. I do wonder how this relates to Pokemon Synapse, which is also rumored to be similar to Splatoon. From the original Teraleak, this was rumored to be a joint project between Gamefreak, ILCA, and the Pokemon Company. Last up in Legends ZA leaks, it looks like the game had properly modeled windows and buildings earlier on. The downgrade is likely because the game is still supported on Switch 1. It is nice to see that they had the capability though, just not the system support for better graphics. Next up, it looks like we have info from Gen 10, which was rumored to be Project Gaia. This is going to be called Pokemon Wind and Waves, Theme Infinity. Originally, this game was actually rumored to be about Greece, but it looks like that's already thrown out, and that's a false rumor. The original setting for Pokemon Wind and Waves is going to be Indonesia and Southeast Asia, and it looks like there was documents from 2021 that contradicts the information about being based on Greece. We don't know if the region setting changed during development. And then they have a lot more info. There's going to be a ton of info here. Pokemon Wind and Waves overall inspiration. And there's a machine translation here because this is all in Japanese. Because, they're the original documents from Gamefreak. The theme is infinity. This world has endured since ancient times and it will continue to in the future. Past generations entrusted something to the future. We now receive that something and live on, entrusting it to the next generation. Driven by the unseen force, people are propelled forward. People, nature, and Pokemon are connected. What kind of world can we leave for the next generation? Is the world we have now truly something we can entrust to the future? The winds and waves of the times, storms and whirlpools. The unseen force creates nature, brings forth abundance, and gives birth to peace. The unseen force destroys the environment, breeds pathogens, and spawns conflict. It's hard to call the modern world a good one. I feel sorry that this is the only world we can leave for our children. If that is the case, then at least I want them to acquire the strength to survive in this harsh world. What kind of world can we leave for the next generation? And what should we pass on to them? This is the story of parental responsibility and children's rights, endlessly passed down through every age. Play that continues infinitely, lands that expand infinitely. Evolution holds infinite potential. That is a wild statement, frankly. This game sounds really expansive for the next generation and very ambitious. I am very interested to see how the rest of the leaks shake up. So it looks like Ku has confirmed that the information that was shared is correct. Pokemon Wind and Waves is set in Southeast Asia. The Greece rumor was fake. Going on from that, Pokemon Wind and Waves legendary Pokemon. Package Storm. Storm package Pokemon. Role is Old Man. Lives in an island that repels people. Possesses the power to correctly guide people and Pokemon with the power of wind. Only accepts humans who have properly raised bred Pokemon. That's surprising to see. I know that breeding has always been an element of Pokemon, but honestly, I feel like it's more of one of those secondary things that maybe takes place more in the VGC scene or people who are trying to shiny hunt. Not so much like a regular casual player type thing. Package Wave. Wave package Pokemon. Role is Old Woman. Lives in an island that repels people. They both repel people. Possesses the power to correctly guide people and Pokemon with the power of waves. Only accepts humans who have properly raised bred Pokemon. This is the same thing, okay? That sounds a bit weird. I thought they would be like really vastly different. Usually there's some kind of like clash in whatever. But maybe that's just the same concept for both of them. I mean, they're obviously still both the same base game. The Storm Package Pokemon, its role is that of an old man. It lives in an island that keeps people away. It possesses the power of wind to properly guide humans and Pokemon. It accepts only those humans who have correctly raised the seed Pokemon. I don't know what seed Pokemon refers to right now. It looks like Wave is pretty much the same thing. Again, just old woman instead of old man. Has the power of waves instead of wind, and both of these old people kind of only care about your seed Pokemon, I guess. I guess that'll be a concept that's unique to this game. Looks like they also talk a little bit about the new battle mechanic for Pokemon Wind and Waves. Techno-Waza, which could be translated as weather moves. Now, we already have weather moves in the Pokemon series, especially with Castform, but I expect this to be more impactful in a way. Maybe it'll have some effect on the actual environment and not just like make use of the weather that's existing in the environment. Maybe you can actually change the weather in an area, which would be pretty interesting. And then they finally go into what seed Pokemon are. So it appears that there's a new mechanic type of special Pokemon in Gen 10 called Seed Pokemon. A baby Pokemon of the seed species can be found in resort areas. Seed Pokemon equal unevolved form. I guess those are basically the same as baby Pokemon. It does say that here as well, that baby Pokemon. I would assume maybe it relates to new baby forms of Pokemon rather than just like the existing ones, rather than just like, Pichu and Igglybuff or, like those types. And this might be something completely different. Or maybe your starter potentially starts out as a seed Pokemon. Or you have to create them yourselves as well. So it says that it's a rare sight in the land and no one has ever seen its evolved form. When it travels to the island where the main legendary resides, it begins to evolve. Its evolved appearance is said to have infinite variations. I think that's a pretty bold statement. Again, they said this in the earlier part where I just think that's a little bit too much for a game. It's really ambitious. I don't know how you would generate it in a game, essentially. Because most games are more procedurally done, where everything is, planned out ahead of time. The models are created and like the story is formed, and they even give us limited customization options. So this makes it almost sound like the game is going to generate the Pokemon, so it's unique. Maybe kind of like how Spinda has infinite possibilities in some games, with just its pattern on it. But I think it's more than that. So I guess we're going to have to see how this shapes up. Okay, so we have even more on the weather. Weather technique equals a new power-up expression. Performs an overall attack. Not sure what that means necessarily. Professor, staying at the hotel, a guide for nature classes. Survival professor, researching and the relationship between weather and Pokemon. Studying Pokemon's weather transformation. Has knowledge from the books, but in actual survival knowledge, friends are superior. Friends are always superior. Let's be honest. That's like the story of every game and anime ever. The documents also detail how the final boss will play out. We won't spoil that. I'm probably not going to read the documents, so if you want to read them yourselves, you want more spoilers, they exist out there, go look for them. Pokemon Wind and Waves start the adventure in a big tourist city. They mention that they specifically want to break the pattern of always starting the game on small towns. I'm really glad to see that, because I think that's one of the things that's been very overplayed. The Pokemon format has been very static, standard, unimaginative. It's always the same format. The format works, but it's nice to see them taking some risk and trying something new. In Pokemon Wind and Waves, you start your adventure in the big resort hotel. Apparently they want this hotel to serve as an MMO lobby? What? I'm a little bit surprised to see MMO and Pokemon in the same sentence. It's one of those things where it's it's something that I think every Pokemon fan has always wanted, but based off of the capabilities of Scarlet and Violet, I think Nintendo's servers are a little bit too weak to really host a true MMO. And it doesn't lead me to believe that there's a lot of hope here. It's one of those things in practice, it hasn't really worked well for Nintendo and Pokemon in general. And it's a nice idea. It's a nice idea for sure. I'm not sure how that's going to play out, frankly. So They want it to serve as an MMO lobby where you can see other players, interact with them, and have quest boards. I don't know if that's going to work out. This is from early in development. We know Gamefreak likes to scrap ideas. This is completely true. I would be very surprised to see this survive. Would be very happy to see it. I would be totally happy to see it. I just think in practice it's not going to work. So Friend, this Pokemon is a rare Pokemon that lives only on this island. Friend, it seems that when it evolves, flower blooms, but no one has ever seen it. However, according to legend, it's said to have an infinite form. So they're talking about the seed Pokemon again. I guess the seed Pokemon is like a literal plant. So that's supposed to bloom over time and kind of grow like a plant. I guess there'll be maybe multiple forms of like kind of types of plants you could get. You could think of it like a lot of different ways, but this is all just theory crafting. Like, you could grow, like your Pokemon could grow into a flower, your Pokemon could grow into like a shrub or like something else. And maybe it grows into a tree, an actual professor tree. But no, I have no idea how that's going to work out. So with Pokemon Wind and Waves, Game Freak wants to tackle the jungle environment, which really hasn't been fully seen before in Pokemon games. Survival in the jungle will be one of the main themes. I think this is a good theme if it's based off of Southeast Asia. I could see like, it's like very like rainforesty, humid, and, jungle environment. So this fits in really well. So I guess this is an image that leaked a couple months ago. It looks like Teraleak ignored it initially because they didn't want to distract from Legends, but it's real. This is Pokemon Wind and Waves, and yes, you can explore underwater. I think underwater exploration is pretty much a big point of a lot of MMOs. A lot of MMOs that I've played, it's a big facet of it. It's like, oh man, we're finally going underwater. So I'd be really surprised if Pokemon can nail it. I mean, we obviously can ride on water right now, and we can technically dive in earlier games. So this could be a more, open world style diving mechanic rather. So we'll see how that shapes up as well. Pokemon Legends. Oh, this is brand new information. So we're done with Gen 10 now. Pokemon Legends, Ho-Oh and Lugia. Yes, there were 2 versions for this one. Oh, they split it. 2024 marks the 25th anniversary of Gold and Silver, which are my favorite games, by the way. A historical episode set in the past of the Gold and Silver era, Pokemon Tales of Then and Now. Why didn't we get this? Aims to be the ultimate form of the Legend series, set in a time before Pokemon trainers existed. How are they supposed to manage that? A story about the origin of trainers. The protagonist, who has fallen through time, commands Pokemon and revives 3 Pokemon. The burned tower is said to have been destroyed by the fire 150 years ago in the past. It was a 9-story tower, identical to the Bell Tower. I don't see how that's really different from like the first Legends game, so maybe that's why they scrapped it and they wanted to do something just different overall. Because like, the current Legends game that's coming out later this week pretty much is set in the future. And I think there were a lot of rumors around that kind of thing where it's like, okay, the old game was set in the past. Now they're going to do the future, and it kind of, plays hand in hand. And maybe this touched a little bit too close to that. It's a bit disappointing, though, because I think a lot of us are just, especially those that grew up with Pokemon, are really big fans of Gen 2. Gen 2 was just, like, so much more impactful to me than Gen 1 was. And, yeah, it's disappointing to see. So maybe it comes back one day, but it kind of sounds like this is a scrapped concept. To explain more about the Infinity theme, they are going to procedurally generate new islands, so the region is technically infinite and changes. That's a nice idea, but generally with procedural generation, I haven't seen it working out like to great effect. I mean, this sounds like No Man's Sky, right? No Man's Sky is a great game that had a lot of growing pains, frankly. And it might feel a little bit bare for the Pokemon universe. I think Pokemon really benefits from like tighter packed areas rather than these kind of like open world areas that kind of seem to lack interesting elements. I don't know how that would work out. And if you, I think a lot of people remember No Man's Sky launched and it was terrible. Like it's a good game now, but it's had 9 years to develop and grow. And that's just really ambitious for a Pokemon game. I'm not sure how it's going to work out. So getting out of Gen 10 information, it also seems like there's a lot of information regarding the roadmap that Pokemon had planned out. Pokemon Legends 2, which is the Legends ZA, which is coming out. was originally planned to release in 2024. This is kind of what I think a lot of us thought initially. And then while Gen 10 was scheduled for 2025, I mean, we did kind of feel that we were lacking a new Pokemon game, but it sounded like Game Freak kind of bit off more than they can chew. And I know they have like a kind of old style of development, so it's not too surprising. I'm glad that they delayed the games because I do think they needed a lot more care. And everyone remembers how like Scarlet and Violet launched, and they even to this day still have issues. So it's really nice to see that. Looks like Gen 10 will be a Switch 2 exclusive. Not surprised there. I mean, I assume that any of the games that are coming out this year and potentially early next year are still going to be available on Switch 1. But, they're going to start wanting to push their new console. Otherwise, no one's ever going to upgrade. I can play this game on Switch 1. Yeah, it might play at a poorer quality, but, there's no incentive there to buy the next console if they don't start only releasing games on the next console. It looks like they jump around a bit here with news. We're back on Gen 10. The only information about the starters we have now is how you encounter them. Protagonist just arrived to the island and is en route to the hotel. The city streets are completely jammed. Apparently, Pokemon have escaped and the cars can't move. Hey, you there. Catch those Pokemon for me. The starter 3 dash off and the player must chase them. So here we have some more information. Originally, Pokemon's Legends 2 was going to be set in Johto, which I would have really liked to see. They decided to change it to Kalos later. Looks like there's a couple pictures about this. Can't read them anyway. Looks like these are some early renderings of concept ideas. Oh, this would have been so nice. Big shame there, honestly. I wonder if there's some more information on that. Doesn't look like it. Every Pokemon can be ridden or touched. Wait, what? What is this about? Weird. Important note, this was planned document from 2020, 5 years ago. We don't know if this changed, and Game Freak does scrap a lot of features in development. They're probably talking about maybe the Pokemon riding from the Legends game that we're having released now. But that was stated earlier on as well. So Pokemon Scarlet Violet DLC was originally planned to be set in Kalos and Alola. What? But we ended up getting Kitakami and Unova. I think that's better, frankly. Don't really have much opinion on that beyond. So here's a lot of early concept art, it looks like. And they have like stuff like timelines and whatnot, and just pictures. But looks interesting. Looks interesting. Like Titan DLC. So yeah, this is really old information. So interesting enough, they also include the development budgets, which I've heard is pretty small compared to a lot of like AAA games these days. I know Nintendo tends to keep it like a little bit lower key. I mean, they don't even pay them as much in Japan as they do necessarily in America. Developmental budgets. Scarlet Violet DLC, 500 million yen. Legends 2, or ZA, which is what it became, 2 billion yen. And Wind and Waves, which is a mainline game, which has some crazy features that have been stated so far. 3 billion yen. I'm not sure that's enough money, frankly, to cover what they're trying to promise, like MMO features and procedural generation. I don't know if 3 billion yen really covers that, frankly. But going on from that, it looks like beta time. Pokemon Sword and Shield proposal document. Is this another game? That's probably what that is. Game Freak was originally planning to create a Pokewalker app for Pokemon Sword and Shield. Oh, so I guess this is another scrap feature. You connect your phone to the game and you could take your Pokemon with you and play mini games. Isn't this kind of sort of what they have with Pokemon Go? I'm not really familiar with Pokemon Go. I only played it for a certain amount of time, but just a curiosity. I think they used to have a similar feature in a couple cases where they had the one thing that they offered with the remakes for Gold and Silver, which is very expensive, obviously, to get now because it's secondhand and it's been a long time. And you could walk around with your Pokemon. So I think this is kind of more of a remake of that sort of thing. But I guess you could play mini games with them as well. You could even catch Pokemon in the Pokewalker app and move them back to the main game. That's impressive. I think a lot of people would like that. Kind of a mixture of mainline game support with having kind of like the Pokemon Go element, kind of stealing from that sphere in a way. Okay, we're starting to see why they jumped back to talking about Sword and Shield. I didn't understand at first why they would want to jump to talking about Sword and Shield from where they were talking. We have some early beta concept art, and I guess this is pretty much planning, guaranteed, for Legends 3. Yeah, this is just an early drawn concept of the map that we have. You can kind of see, like, the sword that we have is kind of the routes, and maybe you could consider the landmass sort of a shield. Either way, it's just the Galar map. It's drawn out, but this is confirmation. Confirmation right here. Legends 3 is going to be in Galar. That is really surprising to see, honestly. I would not have expected. I think a lot of people have very controversial opinions about Galar. Sword and Shield was not my favorite game. I think it was okay. It was ambitious. There was a lot of controversy there. You know, it was the first game where they didn't bring over the complete decks, and a lot of people were just really upset by that, and I do not blame them. I mean, there was the whole big controversy about that, and yeah. So Pokemon Legends 3 Galar, set 1,000 years in the past, and you must create the first Gigamax Pokeball. Wow, and so I guess there's some concept art for that. That's a rock. I'm not really sure how they're going to manage that, but yeah, I guess we'll see. I think this might be even set further back than Pokemon Legends. I can't remember how many years back that was set, but yeah, that's a concept. I do think Galar has a lot of history behind it that they could use for making a game. Not as excited about it, I guess, just because I don't like the region as much. You know, I would obviously rather have like Pokemon Johto, but that was supposed to be 2 rather than Legends 3. But there is a lot of history in Galar, you know, with the shield hero and the sword hero and like the dogs, and you know, maybe they could do a lot of that. And obviously, you know, at some point balls had to be made, so I guess we're gonna find out about that. So, okay, let's state this. Here comes the biggest leak today. Gen 11 is coming in 2030. That is ambitious. Considering, you know, Gen 10 hasn't even come out yet, we'll see if the timeline survives, but huge news, huge news. Looks like they released leaked the whole roadmap up until 2030. So we have Pokemon Wind and Waves, which is releasing in 2026 next year, and the DLC is going to come in 2027. Then we have Pokemon Legends 3, which is going to be in Galar, releasing in 2027. We'll see if that happens. I would be really surprised to see the DLC come out the same year as a Legends game, mostly because, you know, Gamefreak hasn't been the best of development overall. I mean, we've seen a number of issues over the last years, obviously. And then there's a Pokemon multi-region remake in 2028 or beyond. We'll have to look into that a bit more. That is a wild concept. Pokepia will get DLC, and then Pokemon Champions was originally planned to release this year. I find this all like very interesting, because one of the things that really draws my attention here is, you know, they have all the timelines. Like, you know, we talked about this is basically Legends, and we have, you know, the next generation coming out and all that stuff. And then, you know, like Seed is what was talked about, right? And what's weird here is that like Synapse is still here, which was rumored to be the collaboration with kind of the Splatoon-ish style gameplay, which apparently was played with in Legends today, but then scrapped or whatever. So I don't know if it's coming back here or like what's going on there, or maybe this is just a scrap project altogether and they just tried to rope it into another game and then we're like, nah, it's not going to work out. Gonna have to really see what happens there for sure. So moving on from that really tragic news, we got some more Pokemon Wind and Wave screenshots. Looks really nice. Got some, you know, jungle vibes, you know, kind of what we expected. This looks a little bit weird here. But this one overall looks pretty okay. And then, yeah, some comments on didn't think Teraleak would ever be toppled. Even more Pokemon Wind and Wave screenshots. We got some more screenshots here. And then they also have some screenshots from Pokemon Legends Galar. A lot of placeholder images. We got, you know, early Dynamax Pokemon. You know, that's going to be the concept overall. Concept art, you know, more comments about this. Pokemon Project Seed is not only the dream multi-region Pokemon game that people have always asked for, it also appears to be an MMO. I just think an MMO is too ambitious for Pokemon Company. Looks like Pokemon Seed is the one that's going to be based off of the multi-region. So they're going to combine all of the regions that technically take place in Japan, which would be the first 4 generations, and they're going to make an MMO. I don't know if they'll fill in the rest of it or what? I don't even know how this would run on a Nintendo console. That's a lot. That's asking for a lot. It says Seed is a prototyping project for the next generation online game playable by multiple people. I do not know how Nintendo would run this. Set in a region that connects Hoenn and Sinnoh. I just can't see it. That's so demanding. Like, we're already seeing struggles with like current generations, and yeah, the Switch 2 is more powerful than the Switch 1, but not this level of powerful. This feels like a project for like a real proper standalone console, not something that can be handheld. Like, you need like a PC to power this thing for sure. Don't know how this will shape up. Maybe it becomes a scrap project. Who knows? Very early on, it's a leak. It's basically, I don't know. It could be hogwash at the end of the day. Some interesting information here. Pokemon Legends Gallery is inspired by Xenoblade Chronicles X. This is an actual image somebody from Gamefreak used to pitch the game. That is, they're doing their best. They're doing their best. That is really funny, actually. Moving on from that, though, we talked about this already, too. That was just down there. Okay. Game Freak is developing the multi-region Pokemon remake. Objective for this is the protagonist is to be able to walk from Sinnoh to Hoenn. This will also include Kitakami, codenamed Seed. Real interesting. And then they have more Wind and Waves Gen 10 features, Gym Adventure, Weather Moves Acquisition Quest, Ride License Quest. So I guess, maybe this is what they were talking about earlier with Ride Pokemon are going to be available. MMO Raid Battle. Do not know how it's going to work. We have like raid battles right now and they don't work the best. Pokemon Rescue, a boss Pokemon. Seems like a new version of Totem Titan Pokemon. Pokemon Survival and Diving is really ambitious. New graphics engine, Pokemon Engine X. They had to make a new engine for this thing. I still can't see how this would be on a Nintendo console though, so I guess we'll keep seeing. Okay, we're finally catching up. In Pokemon Wind and Waves, you get the Seed Pokemon at the start of your adventure, and you must raise it to a certain level to be able to enter the island for the main legendary. That makes it sound like it's the starter Pokemon. The island is procedurally generated based on how trained the Seed Pokemon is. Interesting. The evolution for the Seed Pokemon will be procedurally generated. You could get some weirdly weird-looking Pokemon. Also, I don't know how I feel about that, because that definitely means that you're not going to ever be able to port the Pokemon into later gens. Like, you're never going to be able to bring this thing into home. I don't see how that would happen. And then you're definitely not bringing it to Gen 11. I also don't see how that would happen. So it says the evolution for the Seed Pokemon procedurally generated, including unique patterns for flowers and fractals. So every player will have a different looking Seed Pokemon evolution. There's going to be a lot of jealousy there. Someone's going to have some really cool thing, and everyone's going to be like, "Oh, I wish mine looked like that." We'll see how that plays out. So, in Pokemon Wind and Wave, the player will be able to challenge the final boss right away after getting the ability to traverse the sea. Yeah, just go beat yourself against the impossible god boss. Sure, whatever. People. That's the benefit of an open world game, I guess. You could just wander into an area that you might not have to be in or not supposed to be in, and that's totally fine. Might be a bit challenging for people who are more used to like linear style Pokemon games. This can be a real huge departure, frankly. And you'll be able to defeat it and see the credits. This game is going to be so speedrunnable. It's hilarious. But like you're going to have like some strategy where you like set up your Seed Pokemon to make sure you can go do the final boss and get credit roll, like any % complete the game. However, it will be a lot more difficult. I mean, if you're fighting the boss at like essentially like level like 5, yeah, it's going to be difficult. So moving on from that, this is interesting looking. So in Pokemon Wind and Waves, the gyms and the Titan Lord Pokemon are mixed together. There are a total of 18 challenges, one for each type. They will be inspired by sustainable development goals. This is a lot. Clearing all 18 challenges allow you to challenge the champion. So the champion doesn't sound like it's necessary to complete the game or have the credits roll. Sounds like it's a true ending style thing. So we'll have to see how this shapes up further. So it looks like go on to talk about the old map. I guess this was the leak prior where they thought that this was going to be, Gen 10 based off of Greece. Didn't happen, obviously. Confirmed fake. It's going to be based off Southeast Asia. Moving on. More leaks for Pokemon Wind and Waves. Releases 2026. Set in Southeast Asia. Island exploring. Underwater exploring. Open world. Main themes. Infinity. Survival in the jungle. Procedural generation for islands. Still very mixed opinions on that. Brand new graphic engine. Switch 2 exclusive. So it has been confirmed that this is going to be for Switch 2. Switch 2 is more powerful than Switch 1. I can't see it. I simply cannot see it. So they had even more info, even just 3 hours ago. So I guess this is a lot about the generation of it, maybe. Info about the Legends series versus new gens. The Legends series is about digging deeper. Targeted at gamers, digging deeper into action. So, they're going more into like the action style combat of like adults and stuff. Digging deeper into the worldview and history. So they're going to explore a lot of more complex emotions and whatnot, rather than the main series. Main series is about expansion. The target is wide, including beginners and fans. Furthermore, it promotes the expansion of play through communication. They really want to connect people. That's what I'm getting from this. I mean, it kind of makes sense. Like, one of the features I wasn't super thrilled about is like, oh yeah, you can have a camera for your Switch 2. And then in this day and age, it's like, why do I want a camera on my Switch 2? I have like, Discord and, like video calls, and I just like don't need a video calling service on my Nintendo console. At least that's how I thought about it. But I guess this is a different way to communicate with people. That's how I see it. So they intend to mix open world plus MMO with Gen 10. Really ambitious again. We'll have to see how Gamefreak handles it. I'm not sure they have enough devs to work on it, frankly. And then also goes on to say, Pokemon Wind and Waves is planned to have MMO features with codename Gaia. As the islands are procedurally generated for players, this just sounds like No Man's Sky Pokemon. The idea is that players will be able to upload the islands they discovered to the Gaia. This is No Man's Sky Pokemon. You can literally do that in No Man's Sky. I don't know what to say about that. It's ambitious for them. Again, I mentioned it briefly before, but I've personally been playing a lot of No Man's Sky recently, and it's really fun. It's a good game. I enjoy it. Was it a good game 9 years ago? No, it wasn't. It had a lot of issues. People reviewed it really poorly. It ran like garbage, frankly. And with Game Freak's track record, I'm not sure how they're going to pull it off. That's a lot to ask for them, So again, just another thing we're going to have to see shape up over time. Anyway, starting to look like we're getting to the end. Talks about Seed Pokemon will revert to its default form when transferring it to future games. Oh, so they do have plans for that. I was kind of worried about that. I didn't see how they were going to ever allow them to move into other games. It's going to kind of suck to like lose your unique Pokemon that has evolved. But there's not really any way to bring it over into other games. So it says the Seed Pokemon will revert to its default form when transferring it to future games or champions. It will only be procedurally generated inside Wind and Waves. That does make me wonder, though. Would that mean that you can continuously procedurally generate it? Like, can you evolve it and unevolve it? Or is it like a permanent thing? Because, I mean, you could just transfer your Seed Pokemon to a different game, like unevolve it essentially, and then do it again. Or maybe it has like a unique form every time it evolves on like the island. That's going to be interesting to see. So then they also have some graphical engine wind simulation stuff. And then there's an overview. So it's done. We finally made it through. So a summary of upcoming Pokemon games leaked today. Mega Dimension, codename Sakaku. This could be... I mean, it says it's coming. I think this is. I assume that this is ZA. I mean, it's coming out already, so there's nothing else coming out before this. And then you move on to Gen 10. Yeah, so I assume that's going to have to be ZA. 2026 Pokemon Wind and Wave, Gen 10 codename Gaia. Then we have the Gaia DLC coming out the next year, and then we have a codename Ringo, which is Legends 3 Galar. And then we have the Pokemon MMO, codename Seed, online multiplayer, multi-region game, Kanto, Johto, Hoenn, Shino, Kitakami. And then, I'm going to hold off a few more years, we got Gen 11. And that's it. That's Teraleak 2. We got everything. And I guess we'll just see what's in store for us. So, thank everybody for watching. was a good ride. I don't typically produce content this quickly, but I was really interested in seeing this, especially with Legends coming out very soon. So, keep your eyes on thing and see you soon.